Well, did you want to have your meeting today or you want to do it tomorrow?
I can do it today.
Okay, you want to do it today? Okay, I'm going to, then I will put this aside, put this back over here and get it out of the way. And you can come up here and have your meeting, and I'll go back there and take notes.
Thank you.
We could do soccer at the sport center.
Oh, that's a good
Oh,
idea.
yeah.
You're only like 20 minutes too late.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So we're gonna have a meeting. So the purpose of this meeting is discussing about the soccer ministry in Japan, especially for youth. So yeah, I plan to play soccer or futsal at the closest gym from the church every Friday or Saturday evening. The purpose is to have a fellowship with youth, to reach out others, and to make a good relationship with them. The goals of this ministry are to make welcoming environment for the youth to come to the church, to give them opportunity to have a fellowship out of the church, and to make an opportunity to evangelize. And it is easier for them to come to the church next day of playing soccer and to invite their friends to the church. So this is a really like rough plan. So I want to ask you guys about like more like better idea or suggestions. So yeah, it would be helpful.
I have not a suggestion, but a question. Like,
Mhm.
so the goal of this is to create like a welcoming environment, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's not going to be like sharing the gospel at these, right?
I know.
So, what will you do, like, you know, if you do this with the hope that, you know, the kids will eventually start maybe coming to church or, like, feel more welcome to come to church? What if you see that that isn't happening and, like, just the kids are just coming to play soccer and that's it? Like, after some significant time you don't see any results,
Mhm.
what would you do?
So, oh, that's a good question. So maybe, I don't know. I think, like at first, if it doesn't happen, like new people that doesn't come to and don't come to the church. I think I'm gonna do like more church related events, you know, so that we can introduce about the church, because like in Japan, Christianity is not like common, so you know Japanese people don't know about the church at all. So yeah, maybe introduce about the Bible, or maybe like I can connect with the youth like privately, so not like as a big group, so that they feel, oh, it sounds fun, or you know they can figure it out. So yeah, it might be.
I have a suggestion.
Mhm.
Another way you could do it, in, you know, as well as that, is if you have, you know, like your teenagers or youth that already go to church and you know the gospel, know Jesus, and you could have kind of more like training sessions with those guys, so that they know how to evangelize better and know how to build relationships with those guys that they're playing soccer with better, so that like they have the skills to actually invite them over.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, I forgot my pen. Yeah, maybe discipleship them. Yeah, like that. Yeah. So actually, I have done this, but it was like just one time event. So I want to do it like regularly. Yeah. So yeah, consistent. So yeah, this discipleship period. That's good. Do you have other ideas or questions or suggestions?
Do you have a good group, like enough numbers already?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if I will do this, at least 15 kids.
Okay.
It's coming, not coming. Yeah.
Nice.
Mhm.
Because if it grows, you could always start planning like tournaments or
Oh, yeah.
things like that.
So yeah, I was thinking about it, like making the team and like join the like league or something like that. Yeah, it's also like, yeah, good.
Would be fun.
Mhm.
Are people from the church going to be helping you out with this?
Yes, I think so. Like the college students, yeah,
Okay.
they could help me in. Yeah. So this is like mostly for like junior high and high school students. So, right, you know, also college students can help and also join us. So yeah, what do you think about this?
I think that's a good plan. Is it co-ed or is it just for the guys?
Maybe just for guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Like, girls soccer is not like popular in Japan. So actually, I don't know who plays, you know, which girls play soccer. But if they wants to come, yeah, more than welcome.
Maybe you should plan another activity for the girls.
Yes, yeah.
So maybe a woman can lead it.
Yeah, that is a good idea. What do you think about the girls? How do you think it's good for girls, like this kind of activity?
Well, what type of things do Japanese girls do?
Ah, I don't know. They love chatting, you know. So, and I think they like sewing or creating some like small stuff,
Right.
you know.
See, I mean, like just jumping off that, you could do an activity like weekly that you have some sort of craft or
Mhm.
you know organization thing, but it's very much socially oriented, so that they're there to just talk to each other basically and build
Oh.
relationships that way.
Yeah. Not like busy to like creating. Yeah.
Like doing stuff, but then just
Yeah.
talking.
Maybe other questions or suggestions.
I think it's a good plan. I just can't think of things to add to it.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So, yeah, do you guys agree with this plan? What in motion?
Mhm.
First
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
put this into place.
Second. Okay. So, like A or nay? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Mhm.
Yep.
All right. So, Talk, you can go first. What did you think of this meeting?
It's like beneficial for me.
Was it
I got-
beneficial?
Yeah, I got some.
You got some. What did you get from the meeting?
So like, yeah, if this isn't gonna be good, I mean, like non-believers don't come to the church. Yeah, maybe I should do some disciple stuff to the use from the church, and so that they can evangelize more effectively.
Now I know in this country, if we had a gym ministry at our church, inviting neighborhood kids to come in, and they came in just to play basketball or something, and if some of the people from church were there mingling with them, here probably the church people who are there would develop some friendships and invite them over to their house, wouldn't they? And maybe do some what's called friendship evangelism. Do they do that in Japan? Would they, is that not a custom there to invite people to come to your house?
No, it's not like.
That's what I was thinking. That's
Yeah.
not. I mean, we think that'd be a good idea here, but that's not in Japan. That's not something you do. You don't invite people. But no, really, the only people who come to your house are your relatives. Yeah, that's just like, that's pretty much, the house is not a social place to gather.
But I want to do it though, yeah, because like now I'm.
But, so since people don't come to your house to get together, what do? Oh, they go to a tea house and drink some tea, or they go to a place and eat some ice cream, or they go sit on a park bench and visit. So there could be the friendship evangelism stuff. It would just be done a little differently than what you would do here, because Esther's concerned about, here are people who keep coming to the activity, but they never make the transition to church. Then how are we reaching out to them? And because even if someone had been to the activity for 4 or 5 weeks and never came to church, if someone from the church offered to take them out to dinner, to a restaurant, would they go out to dinner? Yeah, they would say, oh, sure. And then while they're sitting around, because now I don't know if this is true in Japan, but in Greece, when you go out to a restaurant to eat dinner, you stay there for like 2 hours. It isn't like you just go eat dinner and leave. You make a reservation and that table is yours for the whole evening. Is that the way it is in Japan?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that, see, in a sense, where we might have them over to our house here, in Japan, if they went out to dinner, it would be a total evening engagement where you would spend time talking about the kind of stuff we would talk about in our home with people here. And when you travel overseas, you go, what is this? I mean, aren't the people going to ask us to leave so they can sell some more food to some more people? It's like, no, these tables are ours for the whole evening. I don't know if that's true in Europe or not, but I know it was when I was in Greece, and it's just to me it's an interesting phenomenon that they do that.
I wonder if Greece kind of picked up that from like Middle Eastern culture.
Maybe they did.
Because that's a lot of what they would do.
Is that
In Europe, it's a lot more very efficiency minded.
yeah?
So they wouldn't be sitting around just wasting time like that.
But in Europe, they would have you into your home. I mean, in Europe, people would say, "Don't come to my house. We'll have a big dinner at my house." But if you go to a restaurant, they just get your food, get on out of here, and move on down the road. Okay. So, what do you think of the meeting, Daniel?
It's good.
And you liked his idea. And what do you think, Esther?
I think it's a good idea too. I think it will work.
And you like his idea. You just wanted to do something for the girls.
Yeah. An all boys youth group sounds kind of.
And what in the world could we do for the girls?
The craft and social night.
Crafts is Are desserts and candies and cookies and sweets popular in Japan?
Mhm.
How about this for an idea, Esther? Even for girls here in America. Have a bunch of girls get together and, like at Christmas time, and each of them brings a different recipe for a different kind of Christmas cookie.
Mhm.
And then we bake all these cookies. Then we sit around the table and decorate them. And then if we've got 5 different people, we have 5 different kinds of cookies. So we make little cookie plates, or plates of cookies with 5 different kinds of Christmas cookies, but each person only made one kind. And then they sit around and decorate them and talk about it, because girls, while they're making the cookies, do a lot of visiting, and they talk about it, and then they're making plates of cookies to give to people as Christmas presents. And it's like, okay, that's a neat deal at Christmas. What could you do at another time of the year?
Valentine's cookies.
What?
Valentine cookies.
Valentine's cookies? You could do Valentine's cookies?
And like you can, like he was saying how they're crafty. I mean, like you could sew or you could make blankets.
Yeah, you know
or hats
what?
and gloves.
I went upstairs the other day, and there was my daughter and her daughter and her daughter-in-law, and they were sitting at a table with these little painting things, canvases.
Mhm.
Have you ever been to a painting party?
Mhm.
Where these girls pay money, Doc, to have someone, they'll pay $25 to have someone teach them how to paint this picture of the ocean and the sky and the sandy beach. And my daughter found out, she went to one of those and liked it, so she found out you can go on the internet and get a video where they're teaching you the same thing, and she had the video at the end of the table, and they were watching the video and getting their paintbrushes out and doing their little painting things and following the video, and when they were finished, they all had these cute little pictures that they had made. And I think something like that, even craft projects and little paintings and things like that, can do just valuable things where they're just doing some things together. Okay, good meeting. Let's get back to trying to finish this material here. What do I have now? Because I only have another day to get it all done. And Logan asked me about his meeting, and I said, we had your meeting. Remember, I took his little agenda and passed it out? But I said, but maybe I didn't do it the right way, or maybe I didn't do it exactly the way you would have done it. So there's a discussion page on Canvas called Logan's Meeting. So you want to go there to look to see what Logan said about it after he watched the video, and then see if he's asking any questions that he wants you to answer on. So his meeting is kind of a blend of what I did in class and then what you'll do online with him. So go to discussions on Canvas and see if he's asking you to give him some more information. And if he is, then be sure and give it to him. All right. And when I get home today, I'll be sure and put up a discussion page for your meetings. What is this here? Oh, this is some more of that stuff that I gave you earlier. Why did I read that stuff to you? Why did I sit here with these little notes and read that stuff to you when I had it on a handout? How to improve your listening skills? Does this sound familiar?
Yes.
Ask questions for clarification.
Don't interrupt the speaker.
Don't interrupt the speaker.
Let them express themselves how they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Freely.
What's it say? Minimize the filtering effect of your prejudices. Prejudices?
Against Texans?
Who has any prejudice in this room?
I have no idea.
We all do. We all do, don't we? I mean, maybe we wouldn't call them prejudices. I don't think I called them that on my other paper that I had it written on, because I thought that that word prejudice is such a highly emotive word. But we do have things that cause us to filter what we hear. Listen for the ideas and feelings behind the words being spoken. And then there's that picture. Now that picture is even worse than what I gave before. I said, what, maybe 25% or something. This says words are 7%. The tone of your voice is 38%. And your nonverbal cues are 55%. That's 55% of communication. That's what it says. See, I'm thinking it's not that high. I mean, in my head, it's not that high, but at least it's like my tone of voice is 38%. Yes, and that's why, Tom, I did not say those were bad questions, right? I said they weren't directly related to what you were trying to get at, Esther, but what made it sound like they were bad questions? Tone of voice. My tone of voice made it sound like they... Daniel, did my tone of voice make what I said about those questions make it sound like I thought they were bad? Yes? Logan, he says yes. And Logan says, well, so did I, when I listened to it on the video. I mean, I don't know what Logan will say, but it's like, well, that's not what I meant. Well, no, you didn't mean that by your words. And I said, but the words I used, it's like, yes, Tom, the words you used said that, but your tone of voice, I'm going, but I didn't even mean it to be, I didn't mean it to be a criticism of the questions. Well, it came across as a criticism. So no matter what words I pick and how careful I am about the way I say something, what people hear can be different. There's that breakdown in communication again. And that's why we have to be, what would I say? We have to be brave enough to tell people what we're really thinking if we want to communicate. And we have to be brave enough to ask people to tell us what they're really thinking and be completely open to whatever they tell us if we want to improve communication. Now, do you see why so much communication breaks down? And we have to just constantly keep working at it. And what are the attitudes that are needed? I want to hear what you have to say, and I'm willing to accept your feelings and your ideas. Don't have to agree with them to accept them, but I want to hear what you have to say, and I'm willing to accept your ideas and your feelings. Okay, that's enough of that one. Where does that one come from? Here it is, right here. Okay, let's go to the next one. Being redundant. What do we got here? Well, let's pass it out and see. Another one of these handouts from the Art of Management for Christian leaders. I've almost thought about adding this book as a textbook for the class because it's got so much good stuff in it, because it's got a whole bunch of topics. And each one, but the key to this handout is that little thing up in the corner, a word of appreciation. That's what, we've talked about task and people before, but I want to talk about this word of appreciation. And here's what it says on page 158. Most of us need to periodically review our performance in expressing appreciation. Thank you, Esther, for the goldfish. Thank you, Daniel, for the cookies. And thank you, Todd, for the popcorn. Now, why have I waited till today to thank you for bringing these snacks? Do most of us need to review our performance in expressing appreciation? Why don't we show appreciation? Why don't we express our appreciation to others more frequently, on more occasions, for more things? Why don't we do that? One time I said to a group of people in a meeting, I said, why are we reluctant to let our pastor know how much we appreciate what he does for us in our church? And this dear old brother up on the front row said, well, Brother Tom, it's because we're trying to keep him humble. We don't want to make him proud. And remember, I told you that earlier on, didn't I, in the week, about how it's not my job to keep somebody humble. God will humble them if they get too proud. And my job is to humble myself before God, not to keep somebody else humble. And does God want me to show appreciation? Do you have a Bible verse for that? Give honor to whom honor is due. In everything, give thanks. What does that mean? Thank you, Nina, for bringing me some raisin bran this morning when my alarm went off and I woke up. Oh, she does that every morning. Brings me breakfast in bed. Is that cool or what? Somebody goes, what? Your wife brings you breakfast in bed? Yeah, she brings me a bowl of raisin bran. Or if she asked me the night before, would you rather have raisin bran or Cheerios with a banana in it? And sometimes I'll say surprise me, and sometimes I'll tell her what I want. So here we are talking about a need to periodically review our performance in expressing appreciation. So did you thank her this morning for your raisin bran? No. Did you thank her yesterday morning? No. Did you thank her? Let's don't go there. No, you understand? I teach this stuff. And this is one of the joys of teaching this stuff, because I come back and look at it again. And can I just say this? We don't tell people that we appreciate what they're doing often enough. And why don't we do it? Now, I don't think we're trying to keep everybody humble. I think most of us just don't think about it. And how much trouble does it take to just let somebody know you appreciate what they're doing? I mean, could you once a week send your parents an email or something and tell them something about them you appreciate? Could you at least once a month say something to your pastor or a Sunday school teacher that what you appreciate about them? Or is that too much to ask? Can you think of somebody that you ought to express some appreciation to? Well, look what this guy says on page 159. There are a number of milestones or events that can be used as triggers for showing appreciation. What's one of the triggers? Birthdays. Facebook has picked up on that big time. I mean, do you get the little flags that say so-and-so's having a birthday? How did Facebook find my birthday? I didn't put it up there. How did they find it? mean, I did not put, when I opened up my Facebook account, I did not tell them. Did I have to put my birth date on there to open it up? Ah, that's how they got it. When I opened it, they want your birthday. Why do they want your birthday? So they can tell everybody in the universe that it's your birthday. Send him a birthday greeting. Do you send all those people birthday greetings that it flags you for? Daniel? No. Esther? Todd? No. Do you send any of them greetings? Who do you send birthday greetings to?
People I'm closer to.
People you're close to. Daniel, who do you send them to?
Kind of people that I'm kind of close to, but not close enough to send them like a personal text or something like that.
And Talk, who do you send them to?
Close friends.
Well, you guys are better than I am about it. I only send birthday greetings to relatives. That's all. The only people who get a birthday greeting from me are relatives. Because I'm going to see them at a family reunion, and they might say, why didn't you say happy birthday? Especially the younger ones. And my little niece, Emily, I said, I mean, she knows that I did it because Facebook told me to. And I go, happy birthday, Miss M. And I get this email message. Thank you, Uncle Tom. Now, you know why she's thanking me? Because I don't use Facebook except to post pictures of my grandsons playing sports. And that's why I have a Facebook account. So I can put highlights of my grandsons playing sports, and all the relatives can watch my grandson's sports events. I mean, when my grandson last Saturday won a medal for second place in a wrestling tournament where there were like 15 schools represented. He had 5 matches. 2 of them he pinned, 1 was a draw, and 2 of them he lost. But with those 3 wins, that's what a bye is considered a win. So with those 3 wins, he got a second place medal in his weight class. Whoa! And if you want to know what it's like to see a high school boy pin somebody in wrestling, you just go to my Facebook page and click on that video, and there he is smacking that guy down, and the referee goes boom, boom, he's out, he's done, just like that. And he holds his arm up in the air and says he wins the match. And my relatives love looking at those, and that's all I use Facebook for. And I say happy birthday to my relatives. So would it be wise for you guys to find out when all of the birthdays are? All those kids in Japan who are going to come to your gymnasium, would it be good to find out their birthday and send them a birthday greeting on their phone or even as an email, apart from Facebook? What about with the youth you're working with in Europe? Would that be good to get their birthdays? You're not sure? Have you ever had anyone wish you a happy birthday?
Well, it depends if that counts as personal information or not, and whether that would be thrown in jail for that or not. But
Not that much.
Oh.
but
It's a good idea.
So what if could you give out a card? Boy, so much for culture, right? You go to Japan, you don't invite them to your house. You go to Europe, you go, so could I give out a card and said, if you tell me the month and the day that you were born, I don't need to know the year.
it could be done if you talk to the kids specifically and they tell you about
And
it.
I said, I'd like to have I'd like to have the month and the day you were born so I can give you a birthday present.
Yeah.
Would I get in trouble for doing that?
No, if you talk to the kids specifically.
And would all the kids give me their birthday if I told them I was going to give them a birthday present?
Depends on the age.
What do you think, Esther?
Yeah. Be crazy not to.
Well, it's very different culture. They're very closed off, so they're very isolated, and when they have friends, it's a tightly knit group.
Yeah.
So it's hard for a random adult person.
Uh-huh.
Like, hey, I'm offering you birthday presents. So,
Watch this, Esther. So I'm standing there saying, so if you'll give me I don't need to know the year, just the month and the day you were born, and put your name on it and your address, I'll send you a birthday present. Now, see, Daniel's perfectly fitted to work with these people over there in Europe, because Daniel's thinking, well, that's what he says, but what's he really going to do with that information? But that's what the kids in Europe are going to say too, isn't it? So some of them won't give them to you. And then, after they find out that all he does is send me a little box of chocolates, no strings attached, some kid goes, are you still taking names and birth dates to send? Will you send me chocolates if I give you my name and birth date? And your answer will be yes, because of that cultural thing about, in fact, in Germany, they, missionary kids from Germany who come here to Calvary will tell you that this friendship stuff here, people in America don't understand friendships. You know, it's just a whole different thing over there than it is here. And we're much too flippant about this friendship stuff. And we don't really develop close friendships like they do in Germany. And I'm sure a lot of other European countries are like that too. But it's a cultural thing. You say, so I don't want to take offense at that. I don't want to be bothered that they're not tuning in right away. I need to be patient to let them know that I'm trustworthy. That when I say this is all I'm going to do with it, that's all I'm going to do with it. When I used to sell insurance for a living, and I made a good living selling insurance, guess what's one of the things I sent to everybody on their birthday? Every customer of mine, because on the insurance forms you have to put down your birthday. So I had all their birthdays. So every customer got a birthday card from me every birthday. And I would get phone calls from old people who would say, Brother Tom, did you know you're the only person in the world who sent me a birthday card? Now, okay, I did it for business purposes, because they would buy it when they needed some more insurance. Who would they call? Me. If they had a friend who asked about who do you have insurance with, who would they say? Me. And they would even say, he sends me a birthday card on my birthday. He gives me a calendar at the end of the year for Christmas. Well, sure. You know how much of their insurance premium goes in my pocket at the end of each year? I get commissions off of all the money they pay for insurance. I ought to do something to let them know I appreciate them. But when I found out that customers of mine told me that I was the only birthday card they got, my first question was, not to them, but to some of my friends who I was going to school with here, I said, why aren't pastors sending out birthday cards to the people in their church? Too much trouble? Too much expense? Well, don't we want all those people in church putting money in the offering plate every Sunday? Then why not send them a birthday card? Or probably even better yet, a personalized email birthday greeting. Well, that would be too much trouble. Okay, then at least send them a card. Why wouldn't we do that? I don't understand it. Oh, I know why we don't. Most of us need to, what does it say at the bottom of page 158? periodically review our performance in expressing appreciation. And right now, I'm asking you to review your performance, and I'm reviewing my performance in expressing appreciation. And what kind of grade do I get? Is anybody getting 100%? Nope. Are we getting 50%? Maybe. You follow what I'm saying? All of us, everyone in this room, including you, Logan, on the video, all of us can do better at showing appreciation. And can I add this? Where's that statement? And we should. Shouldn't we? We should show more appreciation to significant people in our lives. Okay, so let's start with birthdays. But another one is anniversary dates, a personal note, a gift. You know, I know a pastor one time who actually did this. Every month at his board meeting, he would say, I have 2 people in our church who have been faithful workers for years that I would like the board to send a commendation to for their faithful service to our church, and have all the board members sign it. And then next month, he would bring 2 more people. That means every year, 24 people got a notice from the church board telling them, thank you for the work you do here. We appreciate your service to this church, signed by all the board members. Is that cool? I don't know where he got that idea, but what a neat thing to do. What a neat thing to do, to just on a regular basis select people that they send thank you notes to. And he would just do that. And then the next year he'd have 24 more. So, I mean, can you see if you did that, 24, and then 24, and then 24, you can go through 75 people. My math's a little off. Go through 75 people, just rounding it off, in 3 years, and then start all over again. How cool is that? Do you ever take your subordinates, do you ever give someone a small note, just a personal note of thank you? Do you ever give them a small gift? Yeah, like those apples I gave out to all the people at Christmas time. That was pretty cool. Do you ever give them a coffee break party? No. Do you ever take them out to lunch? No. I'm just not into doing lunch. I don't know why, it just doesn't appeal to me. But I'll find another way to show appreciation. Do people see you? You go, what? Walk around. I mean, on Monday, when I used to work over in that building, on Monday I would deliberately walk around Monday afternoon after I got through teaching my classes and I got through with my meetings. I would walk around on Monday and ask everybody, so how's it going? How's it going? And then on Friday, I would walk around to all the offices and say, so have you had a good week? Things been going great around here? And people just like having you come in and ask pleasant questions and let them know you appreciate it. And I would say, I appreciate what you do here. One time I stopped in a guy's office who wasn't under my area of supervision, but I was going by his office and I just thought about, this guy does a lot for the school and he's been here a long time. And I knocked on his door and he said, come in, and I went in and I stood at his desk and I just walked up to him and I said, hey, I'm just on my way back to my office, but I just want you to know, Daniel, that I really appreciate what you do here at Calvary. I mean, you've been a faithful servant for years, serving in this capacity, and it shows around here. And I started to leave, and I said, have a nice day, and there's a tear running down his cheek. And I come back and I said, did I say something wrong? I said, I didn't mean to upset you. And here's what he said to me. He said, I've been working here 7 years, and you're the first person who's come by to say, I appreciate what you do. Now, you see why he had a tear in his eye? Because I had touched a sensitive nerve. And I left and I said, well, I'll tell you this. I know a lot of people appreciate you. I've heard them say it. They've told me they do. I said, but they should have been up here telling you. I mean, isn't that something? Why would I tell, Esther, why would I tell you how much I appreciate Daniel and then not go tell Daniel? Why would I do that? Daniel, why would you tell Tack how much you appreciate Esther and run that orphanage and not tell Esther how much you appreciate it?
Because it would be an awkward conversation.
And it's not quite as awkward to tell him, right? Isn't that funny? Isn't it? Okay. See, here's where, okay, I feel, okay, being a shy, quiet, private person, do you think I feel a little awkward going around showing appreciation to people? It's not natural. What's the natural thing to do? Okay, here we are again. Over here's the natural thing to do, and over here's the spiritual thing to do. So which will I be more inclined to just naturally do? The natural thing, not the spiritual thing. So I have to force myself to do the spiritual thing. Are you ready for this? If I do the spiritual thing long enough, I become less of a natural person and more of a spiritual person, and then it becomes more, quote, natural to do the spiritual thing than just to do the normal everyday thing. So what I've concluded is that I'm going to have to do something that feels awkward. For example, asking you guys, so what's going on in your life? How are things going? Okay, I never did that in my life till I got into the insurance business. And when I became an insurance salesman, the training program I went through, here's what it said. When you talk to one of your customers, or when you talk to a stranger, before you talk about insurance, you talk about their family. You ask questions about your family. How many children do you have? What kind of work do you do? You ask questions about them as a person. And here's what the manual said. Because people like to tell you about their lives. And if I ask questions about their life, then that makes me, do you understand where they would buy more insurance from me? They're more apt to buy insurance from me if I ask those questions than if I don't, if I just walk up and start talking insurance. Do you understand how it would work? So I did it. I did it. I took my little briefcase, my little manual, I'd go knock on someone's door and I'd say, what kind of work do you do? I said, I'm from the, what was the name of it? I'm from the Preferred Risk Insurance Company, and I'm just out talking to people in the neighborhood. What kind of work do you do? And they go, well, I do this. I said, oh, I have a customer who does that. He says he really likes his work. He goes, yeah, I like it too. And I'd say, well, here's my business card. If you ever need some insurance, I'll be glad to help you. He goes, well, as a matter of fact, my insurance is renewed on my house. I said, in fact, I'd say, I could probably save you some money. And he'd say, well, can you tell me how much it would cost? I said, yeah, show me your policy. And I'd show him. And see, just because I asked him what he did and I had a customer, and how did I know I had a customer who had that job? Because I had asked another customer what he did. You follow? I took a personal interest in people, and it prompted them to buy insurance from me. Now, this might sound awful, and I would probably label this as bad. I'll use another one of your words, Daniel. This was bad. I would ask people what they did for a living and I didn't even care what they did for a living. I was just doing it because the manual said to do it if you want them to buy insurance. So I wasn't sincerely wanting to know about their job. That's pretty phony, isn't it? And I'll confess to you that I felt bad about doing it. But I did it because it sold insurance. I mean, I didn't tell them that I was sincere. I didn't tell them I was insincere either. I just asked the question and let them draw their own conclusions. And then after doing this for about 6 months, I was asking a guy about what kind of work he did, and he was telling me, and I said, so how's it going? He said, well, he said, you know, things have slowed down and I've been laid off. And all of a sudden I go, oh, that's too bad. And I go, wow, you know what's happened to me? I've been asking people what kind of work they do, and I've been taking an interest in people's lives for 6 months, and something's changed in my thinking framework. I now not only am asking the question, I'm actually starting to be interested in these people's lives. And I tell people, some of my insurance training was some of the best preparation I could go through for preparing for ministry. Because while I was a student here at school selling insurance to pay my way through school, I started being a youth pastor. And what's one of the things I carried over from the insurance business to being a youth pastor? Asking my young people what they did for a living? No. What kind of questions would you ask young people to show an interest in them? What?
What kind of things are you interested in?
What are some of the things you're interested in? I don't know. I don't have any interest. What's your favorite subject in school? Are you involved in any sports? You understand? I just started asking questions to learn some things about them. And how did the young people in our church respond to me? Okay, and when I learned things about them, I would write it down on a little index card so I could remember it. And then the next time I saw him, I'd say, so how's... In fact, one young guy in one of my first youth group kids I was working with, he played football. So I went to one of his football games. And the next Sunday at church, it was on Saturday, Sunday at church, what do you think he said to me? Mr. Bonine, you were at my football game? And I didn't even say a word. I said, yeah, I had the night free, so I thought I'd come out and watch you play football. I said, man, that's a tough sport, isn't it? You guys whack each other around big time. He goes, yeah, we do. And then he says, thanks for coming to my ball game. And I'm going, whoa, that meant that much to him? Well, that was good preparation for being a grandfather. Because what do you think my grandchildren say to me when I go to their sports events? Thanks for coming to my ball game. Thanks for coming to my wrestling match. They really appreciate it. So why don't we say, well, if they don't appreciate it, I'm just not going to go anymore. I'm not going so they will appreciate it. But you see what happens? It's like you show people, you take an interest in people, and then you show people you appreciate it. Thanks for buying insurance from me. Thanks for being a customer. Thanks for being in my youth group. Thanks for coming to the gym to play basketball or whatever we're doing here. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for signing up for this class. I mean, think about it. I wouldn't have all this fun this week if you hadn't signed up for this class. My wife asked me last night, how's it going? She said, the class is almost over. I said, I know. She said, well, are you going to do it again? I said, you know what? I said, I know it's been a small group, but this has gone so well with this simulation thing about an organization to treat it like an annual conference where we just do everything in a week's time. I'm thinking I might recommend to Dr. Dodd that we do it this way all the time. Instead of stretching it out over a whole semester where you meet 3 days a week or something for 8 weeks. I don't know. We'll have to talk to him about that and see what happens. Okay, show people appreciation. Are you visible? Do you go around and see people? Oh, another thing, birthdays. This is another thing I did too. When I was an administrator here at the school, I would order a bunch of happy birthday ribbons from this company, and then I would have my secretary, whoever had a birthday, on the day of your birthday here at school, the day you showed up on your birthday to go to work, she would show up at your office and put the birthday pin on you. Say, happy birthday, and it's like, happy birthday. And so every place you go all day long, you've got a ribbon that says what? Happy birthday. And what does everybody at work say to you? Happy birthday, happy birthday. They know it's your birthday. And you see what happened? I triggered all those people saying happy birthday to somebody just by giving a birthday ribbon to the person who had a birthday when they came to work. There's so many cool things you can do. We could do that at church, couldn't we? I don't know why we don't. Okay. So, and here's what he says on page 159. Even if these suggestions seem a bit calculated or contrived, think of them as entry points, certainly not the end in themselves. And what I'm saying is, go ahead and do some of these things, even if it feels a bit contrived, and don't be surprised if your feelings change as you do it, because you see how rewarding it is to the people you do it for. All right, that's enough of that one. Try some of this stuff. You'll be amazed at what it'll do for the world around you, how you can enrich people's lives. What do we got here? Team leadership. How can we build better human relations into our leadership styles? And it says be a team facilitator. Build a team. This is from Gangel's book, Feeding and Leading, page 208. Help followers understand your genuine concern for them. How do you help people understand your genuine concern for them?
Ask questions.
You ask questions, don't you? I mean, when I come by and say, so how's it going? Or you walk in here and say, you having a good week? Aren't those questions showing concern for you and showing an interest in you? Or am I just being nosy? Another thing is be open. That's why when I had an office here on campus, I always kept my door open, because I wanted people to know that my door's always open. Come on in. Now this is talking about being accountable. I thought we were talking about building human relations. Oh, well, guess what? I'm the boss, so I hold everybody else accountable. Can I have people hold me accountable? Can I say to the people under me, hey, if I'm not coming by and asking you how it's going, stop in and just stop into my office and say, you didn't ask me how it's going recently. I'm here to tell you how it's going. You understand? Make yourself accountable to those people. It strengthens human relationships. Hey, look at this. Dr. Gangel says, I suggested earlier that conflict is not all bad. It's not all bad, Esther, that you and Daniel had a conflict. It's not all bad that Daniel and I had a conflict over ice cream. It wasn't all bad. I mean, look what grew out of that.
Ice cream.
And you guys enjoyed drinking that stuff when it melted, didn't you? And I drank some of it, and I even liked it. And then I took what was left home to my wife, and she I said, Nina, I brought this home. I told her the story of why I bought ice cream, because I messed up on the first day when I scratched ice cream off the list and found out later that I had hurt somebody's feelings, and so I just thought I better buy some ice cream to try to make up for it, and I brought it in here, and sure enough it melted just like I thought, but they didn't care, they drank it anyway. And I said, I thought I'd bring the leftovers home for you to put in your coffee, and I said, what'd you do with it? She said, I put it in the freezer. I'm gonna refreeze it and we can see what it tastes like tomorrow. What do you think?
It'll be delicious.
It's not gonna taste very good? If it doesn't, what will she do? She'll put it in her coffee and use it for coffee flavoring. So, all conflict is, in other words, could we say this now? Agreed. I did say, didn't I, that conflict usually grows out of selfishness. But can conflict result, can a conflict produce something good? For example, when I scratched off ice cream because it made sense to me, and I didn't even know I hurt somebody by doing it. And then when I found out I did, it's like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there's an occasion to apologize. I didn't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. And now to make up for it, I will go buy some ice cream and bring it to class. But what did I say when I offered to bring it to class? You remember what I said, Daniel? But it'll melt. And when I said it'll melt, which I thought was a good enough reason not to bring it, what did two people in this room say? Anyone remember what two people said? Melted ice cream's not so bad. I'm going, really? So you prompted me to try something I never tried before. I had a growth experience this week, with ice cream, all because of a conflict that I created unintentionally. Oh, and by the way, don't you often hear this? Once we become aware of a conflict, go, well, I didn't mean for that to happen. It's like, okay, I know you didn't mean for it to happen, but since it happened, let's try to see what good can come out of it. How can something good come out of this conflict? Let's look for something good coming out of this. And Gankle says, conflict is not all bad because it produces disequilibrium out of which new ideas are generated. And I now can actually say this. I never thought in my whole life I'd ever say something like this, but if I ever have an opportunity to drink a cup of melted chocolate fudge ice cream, it will be a pleasant experience. And if I go to someone's house and they're serving ice cream and the ice cream's melted, and they start to apologize, what will I say? That's okay. I've had melted ice cream before. It tastes good. You guys have opened my eyes to a whole new facet of ice cream consumption. Now, here's what's sad about it. See, I quit eating ice cream because my doctor said it's not good for me. And now you guys have got me interested again. So, if I have a heart attack, it'll be your fault. Okay, enough of that. Help followers develop their an ideographic leadership style. What's an ideographic leadership style? I don't know. So I look it up in the dictionary. And does anyone know what ideographic means?
Concern for others.
Oh, it's written underneath there, isn't it?
Yep.
Well, isn't that nice that I put that on the hat? Because, see, now watch. This is my word with, this is the way I play with words. Ideographic sounds like you're drawing a picture of a dummy. Ideographic. So obviously, I don't know Latin well enough to know where all these words come from, so I have to get a dictionary and look them up. But a leadership style that shows a concern for other people. What's on the back of this? Finally, as we demonstrate teamwork with our subordinates, can they reflect that behavior in working with those whose ministries they supervise? If I want people to be a team, I have to practice teamwork in terms of my supervisory style. Okay, here's another thing on learning how to listen to subordinates. 5 things you can do to improve your listening skills with subordinates. What's the first thing?
Feedback.
And what's feedback?
Reiterate what you heard them say.
Feedback, guys, did you hear that? Feedback is reiterating what you heard somebody say. What did I just do?
Feedback. Mine.
Feedback. I took what she said and repeated it. And by the way, did you guys, do you remember what Esther said? Feedback is what? Oh, they weren't listening for that part of it.
Reiterating what they said.
Reiterating what they said. What is feedback, Todd?
Repeat.
What? Repeating what they said. And when I repeated what Esther said, so you guys could hear it again, the very words out of her mouth became the very words out of my mouth. And what did that do in terms of our team dynamic? It adds worth to your words, doesn't it, Esther? To hear somebody else take what you said and repeat it for other people to hear. And just remember that's part of it, is you take what people say and repeat it for the benefit of everybody else. What's the second thing we need to do if we're going to improve our listening skills?
Pay attention.
Pay attention. Pay attention. What's the third thing? These guys are also repetition. There's all these different books, aren't they? Admit my preconceived, now I like that better. Rather than prejudices, admit my preconceived ideas. Admit that I have a lot of preconceptions that I have to be careful that they'll get in the way of good communication. What's number 4?
Discipline yourself, especially your emotions.
Why would he say, discipline yourself, especially your emotions? What happens when a supervisor has an emotional outburst? Daniel, when you were supervising McDonald's, did any one of those workers on the line just do something so dumb so many times that you had an emotional outburst?
Maybe.
And did that emotional outburst improve or diminish the quality of your relationship with those people?
Probably diminish.
You know, this to me is strange, but isn't it something? If okay, I learned this from working with teenagers. It's okay for a teenager to have an emotional outburst, but the parents never should. It's okay for the teenager to get upset in the classroom, but the teacher never should. And I thought, you know something? There's a perception floating around out there in this larger world that we live in, and that is that there's a higher standard for the people in positions of authority. Whether we like it or not, that's the way the world looks at it, and that's the way the people under us tend to see things. So knowing that, I have to live at a different level than what I necessarily would be allowed to live if I was an equal with all the rest of them. So with leadership, with being the manager of McDonald's, comes a level of responsibility that you didn't. I mean, if you're working on the line, you could probably get away with an emotional outburst. But when you're a crew chief, you better swallow it, because it's not going to go well at work. And if you own the franchise,
Do whatever you want.
you do whatever you want because you own the place. But you're sure not going to get a lot of what? Team building accomplished with all the people that work there. Okay. And what's the fifth one?
Don't interrupt.
There it is again. There it is again. Telling me not to interrupt people. All right. Let's put that one away. That one's hurt long enough, hasn't it? Do we have another one here? Yeah, we do. What's this one all about? I just love all these handouts. Now this, here again, is from Art of Management, so it's got a whole bunch of stuff on it. But up in the right-hand corner is what it's really all about. This one's about making your boss successful. Which is more fun at work? To make the boss look good or to make the boss look bad?
Depends who you're doing it with.
And two.
Yeah.
If it's a crummy boss,
And you have support to make the boss look bad. I mean,
but if
it's
he's
worth it.
really a nice guy that you have a good working relationship with, then you probably wouldn't want to make him look bad.
Mhm.
But what does the Bible tell us we ought to be doing in relationship to our employers and those who are over us?
To respect them.
Now, watch this. Can you hear somebody saying, see, remember with the teenagers, when I said the teenagers, Ephesians 6:1, obey your parents, and some kid says, Mr. Bonine, it doesn't say obey your parents in all things. I said, do you have a study Bible with cross references? Look at your Colossians 6, your Ephesians 6:1 passage, and find the cross reference to the Colossians passage, and I had him read the Colossians passage. And what does the Colossians passage say? So, children, submit to your parents in all things. See, God knew when He inspired His Word that there would be a little guy out there who would say that. So He wanted to make sure he had that answered, nailed down. So does God say be nice to your boss if he's nice to you? Or does He say submit to the good as well as to the horrible as unto the Lord in your service to Him? So He includes both kinds. So what can you do to make your boss successful? Interpret and act on what your supervisor wants and needs rather than what you believe the organization wants and needs. What? I make my supervisor successful. Represent him fairly. I used to have people complain to me about my boss. What'd they say? They said, Tom, every time, this was years ago, there's no one you would ever know, that every time the president comes by my office, my staff gets all worked up and nervous and they think they're not doing a good job. And I said, what's going on? They said, well, he walks in here and he says, is that all you have done today? He makes some derogatory comment. And I said, did you know where our president grew up? And he goes, no, where? I said, on a cattle ranch in South Dakota. He said, you know anything about cattle ranching in South Dakota? No. I said, well, I grew up on a farm. And then I tell the story. When my mother cooked a delicious meal, my father would say, Thelma, that wasn't half bad. And she would say, thank you, Bo. I said, do you understand that often in rural communities, in agricultural communities, people grow up with negative comments all the time. You're out plowing a field and somebody comes out there to look at the furrows that you've been cutting in the ground. They said, well, you've done a pretty good job except for that one right over there where you didn't, looks like you kind of fell asleep or nodded off there. It's like, do they have to mention that? It's just part of the culture. And I said, it's just the way he's wired from his childhood. And we're probably not going to change that since he's the president. We just need to learn to live with it. Well, it just gets people all upset. So finally, after it happened 2 or 3 times, I went to him and I said, Mr. President, I won't use his name, but I said, Mr. President, look, you're the president, you can do whatever you want, but every time you go around these offices and make derogatory comments, I know you're just making jokes and trying to be relational, but your ranch style relational comments hurt people's feelings. And guess what he said to me, Daddy? Why are people so sensitive? That's what he said. I said, I don't know. It's just the way city people are. And he said, well, how come it doesn't bother you, Tom? I said, because I grew up on a farm. And I lived around ranchers. I know what it's like. In fact, I said to him, I kind of had a grandfather who was a little bit like you, so I got adjusted to this stuff early in life. And he laughed. He said, well, he said, okay, I'll try to be more careful. He said, maybe I should just stay out of it. I said, well, no, you don't have to stay away. You can go show an interest. But I said, just remember, if you make a comment that hurts somebody's feelings, I'll probably be in there for 15 or 20 minutes trying to help them get back on track. But if he wants to do that, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna say, look, I'm gonna make excuses for his shortcomings. Why wouldn't I? Why not do that? It's just it's how he grew up. And it isn't, but see, it's like, watch, the higher you are in the organization, it's like, well, the guy who's president should never have any shortcomings. What? Where does that come from? But can you see? It's like the higher up you go, the more criticism you have. In fact, I used to say to him, sometimes when people would be critical of the way he's doing things, and I would say to Mr. President, I would say, you know, that's the hazard of being a president. There's so many people critiquing what you do that somebody's going to think anything you do is wrong. You just have to sort out what God wants you to do to steer this ship and then steer it accordingly. And that's just part of the territory. That comes with the job you have. And again, what was I trying to do? I was trying to make him successful. I was trying to help him cope with the criticism that comes his way. I was trying to help him have a good relationship with all of his workers. And I talk about his abilities, and I try not to discuss his weaknesses. I emphasize his strengths, and I don't go around talking about his weaknesses. What good is that going to do? I mean, when someone points them out, I say, yeah, I'm aware of them, but why doesn't it bother you? Because, and then I'll say, nobody's perfect. And I've learned to work with all kinds of people. And here's what I would say. I appreciate the good he does here that far outweighs those little quirks that he carries with him from his ranching background. You see, I could honestly speak up in his behalf because whoever came in after him, well, when he left, and we had another president that asked me to be his academic dean one time, and I said I will for a while until you find somebody. But the second president I worked for, the first one I worked for was a cattle rancher from South Dakota. The second one was a city boy from New Jersey. Are you ready for this? The city boy from New Jersey was pretty sensitive and could get his feelings hurt. Just the opposite of the other one. But he did so much good for this school, I overlooked his weaknesses and focused on his strengths and what he did for the school, and would take the same approach to making him successful just like the other one. My success as his vice president was dependent on how successful I made him work as president. You follow that? If I don't feel like I can represent this person anymore, if I can't make him, if I can't work my heart out to make him successful, I need to move on down the road and let somebody else take my job, who really is committed to the person who's in the position of leadership. And of course, one thing is you always try to understand them. Always try to understand them. And it happens that, well, I was having this conversation with the second president one time, and we had somebody that we had to let go. And he said, you know, I really like this guy. How come he had so much trouble taking care of this job? And I said, well, he and I talked a lot and worked through some of his own personal struggles. But I said, you know, he came from a broken home. And he said, I didn't know that. I said, yeah. And coming from a broken home, he was carrying with him some baggage that was interfering with him doing this job as well as he could. Oh, he said. And then he said, well, Tom, and he just told me out of the blue, he said, I come from a broken home. Boop. And so I looked at him and I said, well, are you aware of the baggage that you're carrying from your broken home? See, the assumption is that if you come from a broken home, you're carrying baggage, right? So if you come from a broken home, are you aware of how that broken home has impacted your life? Are you aware of the baggage you're carrying? And if you're not, and I don't think he was totally aware of the baggage he was carrying. Fortunately for me, his wife was my secretary. So she let me know what it was that would upset him, and I never did that. I always took steps to make sure I didn't do the things that would throw him off kilter that were the result of him coming from a broken home. Now, I'll be specific in this case, because I think you need to know that, okay, if I did something and he didn't know I was going to do it, and he found out later I had done it, and he was surprised by it, that element of surprise would be unsettling to him. What happened to him one day when he was younger? He came home from school, he walked in the house, and what was the biggest surprise of his life that impacted him for the rest of his life? His mother said, well, you might as well know your father left and he's never coming home. And that was how he learned that his father had abandoned him. So, you understand? The way that translated in his life is being surprised by information was unsettling to him. So I made sure that anything I was planning to do, I always took it to him in our weekly meetings and ran the idea by him first before I implemented it, so he would know what was coming. See, you just say, I understand the people I work for, and then I work with that understanding to make the relationship work. The next thing on the list on page 121 there is try to do it his way. I'm not even going to say try to do it his way, just do it his way. If the boss wants something done a certain way, just do it his way. That's all. It just shows, what does it show? It shows loyalty, it shows support, and you say, well, I've got another way of doing it. In fact, I had a guy I worked with in Peoria, a fellow teacher. He said, Tom, this really bugs me. And I said, what bugs you? He said, you go to the school administrator and you ask for something and he gives it to you. And I go ask for something and he says no. How come you get what you want and I don't? I said, oh, that's an easy question. And he said, what? What's the deal? And I said, every time we have a meeting and the administrator announces that we're going to do something as a faculty and he tells us how he wants it done, what's the first thing you do? And guess what this faculty member did? At every meeting, he always questioned the way we were doing it, and he had a suggestion. Does this surprise anyone? He had a suggestion for a better way to do it. Did the administrator want people's suggestions on a better way to do something? No, but I have a better way of doing it. Shouldn't I speak up and let my better way be known? Well, you can if you want. But if you do, the administrator will make a note of that, and the next time you come in asking for something, he'll probably turn you down That's just human nature. Every time he says, this is the way we're gonna do it, I say, yes, sir, boss. I'll do it your way. I'm a happy camper, whatever you say. So when I go in and ask for something, he signs off on it and approves it. That's not rocket science, folks. That's just common sense human relations. I mean, if the guys on your work crew, when you were a supervisor, Daniel, if they wanted to ask a favor of you, what would they do? They would do exactly what you wanted before they asked the favor. And even though you tried to be, what, unbiased in your supervision, let's face it, the people who are always complaining ask for something and you don't give them slack, and the people who are always doing what you say ask for something and you show them a little grace. It's just human nature in terms of relationships. So do things the boss's way. Keep him informed. Don't surprise him. Let him know what's going on. In fact, when I went to Peoria to start this high school, I knew that starting a high school could be a very stressful experience. This administrator had been running a grade school for years. And so I told him, I said, you know, high school is a whole different ballgame than grade school. And I said, it's just the difference between playground sports and organized sports and how intense it all is. And so I said, so there's going to be a lot of things happening here that you're not used to in grade school. And I said, the reason I'm telling you this is I want to ask you, what's the best way for us to get this thing going that's going to make you feel the most comfortable about this new high school? And here's what he said. You know, Tom, he said, I think the best thing we could do is, since I've been in charge of the whole school for all these years, and now you're going to be in charge of this circle over here, I think the best thing is every Monday we meet before school starts and you tell me what you're planning to do for the week so I'm aware of what's going on. And every Friday after school we meet again and we talk about what happened this week so I know what happened during the week. I said, that's a great idea. So I would show up early on Monday and lay out what we were doing for the week. And then on Friday I would go in and see him after school and rehearse all the things that had happened during the week. And it did take quite a bit of time to do that, but that's what I needed to do to keep him informed so he wouldn't be surprised. And then after probably about 2 months of school, he said, you know, Tom, he said, I don't think we need to meet on Mondays anymore. I kind of have an idea of what's going on now. Let's just meet on Fridays to talk about what happened, so I won't be surprised by anything over the weekend with phone calls that come my way. I said, that'll work. And then what do you think happened after about another 2 months? He said, you know, I think we've got this thing running pretty smoothly. He said, why don't we just leave it that maybe once a month we'll meet and talk about what's going on. And if something comes up and I have a question about it, I'll just come and see you. And if something comes up that you have a question about from the board standpoint, you can come and see me. I said, that'll work too. I just do it his way, but long enough till he felt comfortable. And the other thing is give him alternatives. When he asks you for a suggestion, don't just give him one way to do things. We could do this or we could do this. I called Nina yesterday. What did I put on my little plan for the week, my little goal for the week under the caring category? Remember I put on that little piece of paper? Got it around here somewhere.
To buy a fish.
To call her and say, Nina, would you like to have a fish sandwich for lunch? And yesterday when I called, she goes, well, I just ate a ham sandwich and I'm really not hungry. And I said, well, do you need anything from the store? She said, no. I said, well, I'm going to stop and see what, I had to stop, I had to stop at Hy-Vee. Oh yeah, I said, I have to stop at Hy-Vee, so I'll stop and get some bargains. She said, well, if you're going to be there, I could use some of this and this and this. So I said, okay. I had to stop at Hy-Vee to get, I said, I have to stop at Hy-Vee to get some more of that peach applesauce. my students in my administrative process class haven't tasted peach applesauce before. And what have you concluded?
That's good.
That's good stuff. And it seems to taste better the second day than it did. See, okay, let me tell you something, just about the way we're wired. The first day, the first time you taste something that's different, you go, that's different. But it's kind of good. The second day you taste it, you say, you know, this stuff is really good. It's not different anymore because you've already had it for a day. The third day, you already know it's going to taste good. And when you dip into it, somehow the taste is amplified. And there's a lesson to be learned from that, from that biology in terms of just relationship stuff. That the first time somebody hears something that's a little different, they go, I'm not too sure about that. The second time they hear it, yeah. The third time, you understand? You see why I keep giving handouts that keep saying a lot of the same things over and over again? And why I gave them to you verbally right up front to introduce you to them? Is that it's just like the longer you hear this stuff that's helpful, the more you start to enjoy it. And often, the first time you give capital T truth to a lot of people, the first time they hear it, the initial reaction is, I don't think so. And just realize that's just human nature. You haven't lost because it isn't all going to happen in that one moment. But if you come back another time at a later time, now that is the one benefit of having this class go for 8 weeks instead of 1 week, is that I can say something the first week and then come back and say it the second week and the third week, and with those time lapses, it gives more time for it to soak in. But when you're working with those young people, don't be discouraged if the truth you gave them right off the bat, they just didn't jump on it and run with it. Say, no, it's going to take 3 or 4 or 5 times for them to hear this truth. One book that's written on leading people to Christ, it actually has what it calls 7 touches. It says there are 7 times when a person who's never heard the gospel has to come in contact with someone before they reach the place where they're ready to trust Christ as Savior. It's like the first is just seeing a Christian who doesn't scare them because they've heard scary stories about Christians are like the boogeyman, you know? And then it's like, oh, and this guy not only is a Christian, he prays at mealtime, and that doesn't make him some kind of freak, you know? And can you see? And he talks about Jesus, and you just keep all these different, and often it's not just one person doing all 7 touches. It's one person the first touch. And in fact, one time I had a neighbor I was witnessing to, and I was over to see him, and he said, in fact, he came over to my house, and he said, Tom, he said, why do these people from this Baptist church up the road keep coming to my house every week, passing out this literature? Why don't they just leave me alone? And I said, Chuck, these people aren't coming here to bother you. They're concerned about where you're going to spend eternity. They don't know whether or not you have ever trusted Christ as your personal Savior, and whether or not you're going to heaven, or whether when you die you're going to hell. And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, here's a little booklet called 4 Spiritual Laws. Take it home and read it. And then next time you come over, we'll talk about it. Well, he took it home and he read it, and he never came over to talk about it. And then one day he said, Tom, I had the strangest dream last night. I said, well, what's that? He said, I dreamed that we woke up this morning and your house was open, and we went over there and knocked on the door and nobody was home. You guys were all gone. I said, whoa, you know what you just dreamed about? He goes, what? I said, it's called the rapture. He goes, the what? And I got to tell him all about how we're going to be raptured someday. But you understand, this guy just needed a number of different people coming into his life. And it's not going to happen. And sometimes we become impatient, think, I want immediate results. And it's just not going to happen. We're just going to have to take time to let the Spirit of God do His work in people's lives. Okay, so what's more is I'm going to give people alternatives. Not alternative ways to get to heaven, but alternatives in, it's just like, well, not everybody who's going to heaven goes to that Baptist church, and not everybody goes to the church that I go to. And there are even some people going to churches that I don't really agree with that are going to heaven. No way. No way. I've met some of them. All of my friends were Lutherans when I grew up, and I got saved at 18, and none of my Lutherans understood what had happened to me. So what did I conclude about Lutherans? They don't even know what salvation is all about. I come to Calvary, and there's a guy living on our floor in the dorm who's a Lutheran. And I thought, I don't know why he's here, but I'm going to have to spend some time with him so I can lead him to Christ. Guess what happened when we ate lunch and I started witness to it? He said, Tom, he goes, I know what you're doing, but he said, I'm a believer. I've trusted Christ. I said, how could that be if you're a Lutheran? And I told him about my friends. He said, I went to a different kind of Lutheran church than your friends went to. You know what he's talking about? I went, opened my eyes to a whole new bunch of people out there who could be Christians and not wear labels that I even knew. Well, I have an uncle who's a Methodist minister who thought it was a complete waste of time for me to come to Calvary after I got saved. And I thought, these Methodists just don't get it. And then all the years I witnessed to my grandfather, he didn't really trust Christ till he and his wife were on the verge of health problems, and his wife was in a care center in Grant County, Oklahoma, and a minister came down to the care center every day to call on all the old people from the county who came to this county seat to get their medical needs taken care of. And he led my grandmother to Christ, and then he led my grandfather to Christ. And so then the next time I see my grandfather and he's reading his Bible and talking about the Lord coming back, I go, Grandpa, what happened? He said, and he told me the guy's name. He came by the place where Grandma's staying for health care, and he led her to Christ, and then I came in and he led me to Christ. I said, wow, that's so cool. What church does he go to? He said, he's the pastor at the First Methodist Church here in town. And he even preached at my grandfather's funeral. And I went up to him and I said, I didn't know Methodists knew how to lead people to Christ. And he said, most of them don't. And he said, and those of us who do, they put us in these little out-of-the-way churches out in the country. But what they don't realize is they put us at the county seat, where all the old people in the county come when they get in poor health, and they're just ripe for the pickings. And he spends his whole ministry just going to the care center there in the county, leading people to Christ. It's pretty cool stuff. But it's just like, be willing to be open. I don't have to do everything. I'm just one part of all the people who are involved in ministry in these people's lives. Okay. Make your boss successful. Oh, he does talk there about company loyalty. If you can't be loyal to the organization you're working for, it's probably time to find a new organization and move on. Okay, what's this one? Looks like this one's another one from Rush. So, do you want to promote cooperation in your organization? What's the answer to that question? Yes. So what do we do to promote cooperative relationships? What's the first thing we're going to do?
Mutual commitment to meet each other's needs.
And what are some of other people's needs in our organization that we're committed to meeting? Well, we just did one when you had your meetings. After you had your meetings and talked about these, what did you do at the end of every meeting? Say, well, I did that because you told us to have a motion and vote on something. But what did you do at the end of every meeting? Even if you didn't get all the stuff you wanted, Esther, in your meeting, what did they do at the end?
Talk about it.
And they made a motion to do what?
Plan, eventually.
To have a trip to the orphanage. And what did they do, Talk? What did the group do at the end of your presentation about your youth work in Japan? They voted to have this thing happen. You have all of these people endorsing what you're doing. That's part of this thing, is simply commitment to meet the need to know that the rest of the people in this organization are behind me. I love it when I get an email from the receptionist saying urgent prayer request. Someone in the school family has thus and thus happened, and pray for them. And you just sit there at your computer and you pray for the people that you work with. Is that so cool that you can do that? One time years ago, someone made a decision at this school that it was too expensive. This was back before the internet. So the only way missionaries overseas found out about what was going on at Calvary is that they had to get these mailings sent to them. And it's pretty expensive to put postage on a newsletter and send it overseas. So somebody decided that the postage was too much and that we weren't going to send newsletters overseas to all of our graduates anymore. Any idea what that did to some of the graduates? What did it make them think? They don't care about me anymore. They've forgotten about me. And I got wind of that because a lot of the graduates, I knew them because I've been here so long, and I went to school here, and I got wind of that, and I said, you know what, Dinah? And this was especially people in Europe. And so I said, I think I'm going to take a trip to Europe and go visit all of the Calvary alumni who are in ministry in Europe, and just go spend the day with each one of them and take a look at what they're doing in ministry and let them know that Calvary hasn't forgotten about them, even though they're not getting newsletters anymore. And she said, okay. So I planned out this trip, and I went to Europe, and a URail pass, and I'd spend the day with a missionary, and then I'd sleep on the train, and then the next morning get off of my next destination. In the train station, they have a place to take a shower and shave, and I get cleaned up and go spend the day with a missionary, and then get on the train and go see another one, and just spent my time running around Europe visiting Calvary alumni. And I said the same thing to everyone. When I was there, I'd pull an index card out of my pocket, and I would say, now, you need to know this, that the students at Calvary on a regular basis pray for missionaries. Don't we still do that? At that haystack thing? And I said, so give me some prayer requests that I can take back, because even if you don't get a newsletter because of the cost of postage now, you need to know that just like when you were in chapel and you prayed for students, missionaries around the world, the students at Calvary still do that. And I would take their prayer requests and bring them back and give them to the appropriate people so they could be praying for those missionaries. Well, now with the internet, they keep up with stuff all the time, so that's changed that dynamic. But do you understand? Those missionaries had a need that needed to be met by us back home here. And it just means we're committed to meet each other's needs. I'm going to show you how that works out in a small unit. Now, let me talk about a big organization. Now, in the small unit called my family, so I will call Nina when I leave here today and say, would you like to have a fish sandwich for lunch? And it might be, since I've done it 2 days now, she won't have eaten a ham sandwich already. She'll wait to see if I'm going to call. She hasn't figured out that I'm working on a project. She'll probably figure it out by tomorrow, but she'll probably say on Friday, I'll bet you're working on a project. because she knows I'm that kind of a person. But so I'll call her today and say, would you like to have a fish sandwich for lunch? And if she says yes, that would be great. So I'll bring her one, and I'll walk in the house and I'll sit down in my recliner, and I'll push my chair back, put my feet up. She'll say, so how you doing? I said, had a great day. Class went well today. And I'll be sitting there eating my fish sandwich, and she will say, would you like to have something to drink? And I said, oh, a glass of cranberry juice would be fantastic. And she'll get up and get it for me. In fact, she waits on me. Okay, have you ever heard the saying, waiting on someone hand and foot? She waits on me so much that when our daughters are over, they go, Dad, get up and get your own cranberry juice. And then Nina says, no. He gets out in the morning and goes to work, and on the way home he stops at the grocery store. If I don't have to get out and go buy the groceries, I am more than happy to wait on him when he's here at home. And you know what? I'm more than happy to let her wait on me when I'm at home. It's fun to sit in that chair and just eat that sandwich and drink that cranberry juice, and then sit there working my Sudoku puzzle to keep my brain working. And I go, do we still have some potato salad in the refrigerator? And she goes, yes, would you like to have some? And I go, that would be nice. And she fixes me a bowl of potato salad and walks over and hands it to me. Thank you very much. And I will confess, based on that little review, I haven't been saying thank you as much as I should. And I'll bet after this lesson today, I'll be a little more diligent about saying thank you to her. Just meeting each other's needs in the organization. What's the second thing that we can do to promote cooperation? Those little bullets there.
More emphasis on others than on self.
Emphasize others. Is that what you said? More than yourself. You know the magic formula for joy, don't you? Jesus first.
Others second.
Others second.
You last.
And yourself last. Have you figured that out yet? Now, the first time you heard that, the first time I heard it, the first time you heard it, I'm going, I don't think so. I know Jesus is first, okay? But I don't think these other people come second. But what happens, Esther, as soon as we start doing that, as soon as we put other people second and ourselves last, the magnitude of our joy just explodes, doesn't it? And I've had people say to me, that doesn't make any sense. I said, I know. Christianity doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people. It's the joy of embracing, what you call it, Daniel? A biblical worldview. Embracing God's mindset in terms of our relationship to other people. So it's just like, hey, I'm going to emphasize others more than myself and their interests more than my own. And what's the third thing on this list? Trust, and what else? Respect. I'm going to respect what other people say and feel and think, and I'm going to trust those people. Okay, now watch this. I'm not sure. Have you ever trusted somebody and then they didn't follow through and you're carrying a scar around? I am too. So, since I trusted somebody once and somebody hurt me, I'm never going to trust anybody again. No, that's not going to help. Here's what I've concluded. If I trust somebody and they're not trustworthy, then I've learned the hard way. But if I don't trust anybody, I'll never know who's trustworthy and who isn't. So I have to take that risk of somebody even taking advantage of me by being the one who says, I trust them. And in fact, if I trust somebody and they violate my trust, Say, well, that'll never happen again. No, Tom, nobody's perfect. Give them a second chance. Okay, but what about a third chance? Well, I'm not so sure about that. Wait a minute. When someone came to Jesus and he said, forgive others, somebody said, how many times should I forgive the guy who wrongs me? And did Jesus say 3 times and then he's 3 strikes and he's out? That was the judicial system in America a few years ago. What did Jesus say? How many times did he say to forgive the guy? 70 times 7? So if you're keeping score, once you get up to 491, maybe you could say something. Yeah, it's like, just get the point. Just keep being vulnerable. Reflecting God's perspective. A mutual use of gifts, skills, and creativity. Let everybody have their moment to shine with their abilities and skills and creativity. And if you try to do everything yourself, then you're going to do some things that you don't have as much skill in doing that somebody else could do in a more skillful fashion. Develop and solve problems jointly. In other words, you let other people help you solve problems, and you help other people solve their problems. Do it together. It builds, it strengthens the organization. And be productive in the relationship. What does that mean? Oh, it explains it on page 69, doesn't it? Productivity in the relationship. Tensions are at a minimum and energy is used to meet needs, to avoid quarrels. As a result, people experience a great deal of satisfaction. So basically, our relationships are productive because we have satisfying relationships with the people we work with. And then I'm personally committed to the relationship, and I continually work at strengthening the relationship. Okay, that's enough of that one. We got another one to cover here. What's this next one? What's this all about? Do all of you remember from your interviews people identifying problems they encountered in ministry? Well, look what I have done. I have taken all of the interviews over the years that this class has been taught, and I've made a list of all the problems that you can expect to encounter in ministry. This is, what a way to end up the day on such a negative note. What are the top 9 problems? Communication problems. And service problems. Communication problems and adequate workers make up 2. No, there's 9. Yeah, because those 2 categories include a whole bunch of things that fall into those 2 categories. When it comes to communication, people misunderstand me. People aren't listening to me. People are jumping to conclusions, and people are judging my motives. Is all that going to happen when you get into ministry? When you get to the orphanage, are people going to misunderstand you? When you get to Europe, Daniel, are they not going to listen to what you're saying? When you get back to Japan, Talk, are they going to be jumping to conclusions? Oh boy, are they. Talk's been in America, learning all of that American stuff, and he's forgotten what it means to be Japanese. I mean, can't you hear that coming at you? judging his motives. Have you ever done something out of the goodness of your heart and somebody thought you did it for selfish reasons? Did you ever see somebody who needed something and you went out and bought something and gave it to them to meet the need, and the first thing they said is, so I guess you want something, I guess you're planning to get something out of this, that nobody gives anything for free, so what do you want from me? And what do I say, since I just wanted out of the goodness of my heart to be generous? I don't want anything. I just heard you had a need and I went and bought it to give it to you. Huh. I'm not going to believe that in 100 years. People just don't do stuff like that. You'll be coming back looking for something someday. Now, when that happens to you, you probably will have the same natural internal response that I had. I would pick up what I just brought to this person's house, put it back in my car, take it back to the store and get a refund, and let them rot. And what kind of thought would that be? A spiritual thought or a carnal thought? Or are you having trouble sorting that one out? No. Do you understand? When people judge our motives as being bad motives, when we had good motives, that hurts us to the core. Do we understand that? Is that true for all of us, or is it just true for me? It's true for all of us, isn't it? Is that going to happen to you? Are people going to misjudge your motives? Yes. And you know what this handout's for? When that happens, you might send me an email and say, Dr. Bonine, you were right. I thought I was such a nice person, nobody would ever misjudge my motives. But they did. And I just want to get in my car and run over their tricycle.
Yes.
But instead, I thought I would just send you an email because I knew you would understand my feelings. And I'll write back and say, I understand your feelings. Been there, know how it feels. Thank you for writing. I'll pray that God gives you the grace and the strength to keep doing the right thing no matter what happens. But this is not a problem that just happens once in a while. It's one of the top 9. Okay, some of you, I don't know who wrote it in their paper, but somebody wrote in their paper, finding out about these problems that people in ministry have is a little shocking. Ministry, going into ministry, is stepping into a messy business, isn't it? And I need to be prepared to not be totally surprised or shocked by this stuff when it happens. So that's why I went to the trouble to put this list together, is because I want you to know that their communication problems are going to keep smacking you in the face. And just as we've worked through it today, and I've been teaching this stuff for years, and I still have to go home and say, I'm going to have to rework. I'm going to have to spend more time emphasizing appreciation in my own life for people around me. And the second thing is, why can't I get more people to help in the ministry? Why are people so unwilling to serve? And it's like, because they're too busy doing other things? Because they don't think what you want done is worth doing? And you just have to say, you know what? I'm going to have to deal with that. That's why I say, sometimes when the adults won't get involved and do things, you can get kids to do things that adults won't do. Who's worked in CEF? You have?
I have.
You have? You can get kids to do all kinds of things, can't you? It's just like they haven't learned to sit around and be spectators and criticize. That yeah, let's go do that. I mean, this man that I said, when we were going to those good news clubs at his house, when he said, there's no kids in our community. And so if I would have said, well, you want to go pass out flyers up and down the streets close to your house? No, there's no sense in it. There's no kids there. But I could get the young people from the church to say, yeah, let's go pass out flyers. Let's give one to everybody. Take it to the door and say, on this day, we're going to have a backyard Bible club. Come to this address for Bible stories and missionary stories and candy bars and pop. And they all show up for the Bible story and the missionary story. No, they show up for the candy bars and the pop. Then, like you said, Daniel, then they come back for the missionary story because they want to hear the rest of what happened, or the next page of the wordless book or whatever. So I just get the young people to get involved in doing some things. But sometimes you're going to encounter people. Pride. What does the Bible say about pride? Pride cometh before a fall. And you're going to run into proud people and you're going to want to take them down a notch. Just leave that up to the Lord. Let Him take care of it. You're going to encounter selfishness. And you're going to get people who want to do things their own way. And now, gossip's on here. But we're not going to gossip. We're just going to have a prayer meeting. You ever been to a prayer meeting where sharing prayer requests really became a gossip session? That just breaks my heart. I mean, here's the picture that comes to my mind when I see that happen. Jesus in the temple saying, my house, my Father's house, which was supposed to be a house of prayer, you've turned it into a house of merchandise. And so what is He doing? He's throwing out the money changers and their tables. Whenever somebody turns a prayer meeting into a gossip session, pray for Sister Mary. She's going through some really difficult times in her marriage right now. Well, just exactly what kind of difficulty is she having? Well, you don't need to know the particulars to pray that God will give her strength and grace and wisdom and heal her family problems. Agreed? And in fact, I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but when someone shares the details, sometimes the details, you get so caught up in them, you're not as earnest in your prayer for the situation. Because you start thinking about, at least I do, start thinking about, well, what can I do to solve that problem? And it's like, no, what I'm supposed to be doing is praying that God will give her wisdom and that God will work in the heart of her husband and that God will somehow heal this marriage and keep it together. And that's all I need to know. And then, if I see, and if I'm praying for them every day after we have our prayer meeting at church about this, and I see him in the store, and he goes, well, I guess the word's out at church. I said, what's that? He said, about my wife and I having problems. I said, yeah, they did share that. Well, just exactly what did they say? Just that you guys were struggling through some things and needed prayer. He said, so you've been praying for us? I said, every day. Well, did they tell you what the problems were? No, they didn't. See how freeing that is to say that? You don't know what's been going on? I don't know what's been going on. All I know is that God can fix things if we all let him. And I'm praying that God will give you and your wife the strength and the grace to get this thing back on the right track. Now, does this surprise you that when the man knows we're not gossiping about him, but we're really praying for him, when he says, well, Tom, I'll tell you what the problem is. I did a terrible thing. And my wife's having a hard time forgiving me. And I'm going, I don't need to know what you did. But I tell you what, I could see that I could easily do something that would offend my wife so severely that she would have a hard time forgiving me. And I'm just going to pray that God will give you the grace to deal with the pain that you caused by your action. You know, I don't understand this in terms of the big picture from God's perspective. How is it that we think, and I think this is true of both men and women, how is it that we think that we can violate God's standards and indulge ourselves for some kind of pleasure and have the result be that there's going to be long-term pain and scarring in relationships that we're going to have to live with for a long time? Do you know anybody who's murdered somebody? Because Talk mentioned the other day, one of the things man is murder. Do you know anyone who's murdered somebody? And if you know someone who's murdered somebody,
Not personally.
have you ever heard people who have murdered somebody talk about how they never get over thinking about that they snuffed out another human being's life? Okay, there's a few twisted people in this world who think what they did was cool, right? But the real conscientious human beings, I mean, the ones I'm thinking about are the ones who maybe were careless when they were driving their car and they killed somebody in a car wreck. It's just like, oh no, and they never get over. Well, maybe we should talk about something else that's more relevant to teenagers. Girls who have abortions, God forgives them, agreed? But every year, on what would have been that child's birthday, does this surprise anyone that those girls go through some agony again? Hey, we have a daughter who had a stillborn child. And to this day, every year, about the time that child would have been born, or maybe it was when that child died, that she thinks about it. It's like, you see, and that's not a wrong she did, that's just a tragedy that happened and it stays with you. So what makes us think we can do wrong and there will be no long-term scar or consequences? And I try to tell this guy, you know, you can't undo what you did. If you could, you would, but you can't. So you just ask God to give you the grace to accept whatever comes your way as a result of that action. And God is gracious and big enough and powerful enough to do that. Don't put the onus on everybody else to act like it never happened. It happened. And I hope somewhere in life people start to figure out that this much pleasure in life can create a huge, vast amount of pain that you will pack around for the rest of your life. Well, just like people I've talked about coming from broken homes, their parents made a decision. One of the parents decided, I'm out of here. I'm going to be selfish about this. And they've impacted their children for the rest of that child's life. And once the magnitude of, when Jesus died on that cross and all the sin of all mankind for all time was thrust on him. You understand the agony he went through? I don't understand it, but I could see him expressing his pain on that cross. And it's just like, and one of the reasons I talk this way about some of this stuff is I just hate it when I hear this stupid phrase, I'm not a bad person, I'm just sinful enough to have a good time. I'm going, what you call a good time is scarring yourselves for the rest of your life. And why don't people figure that out? And yes, God forgives it and we move on from it, but it still doesn't take away. It doesn't take away from the damage that's been done. This selfishness, just no wonder God hates it so much. Well, what is it? 6 things God hates? I mean, he gives us the 10 Commandments. And he says not to violate marriage relationships. He says not to murder, not to steal. He says not to take his name in vain. And then what's he say? 6 things he hates, yea, 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue. Well, okay. And apathy? What can you do about that? I don't know. How do you get people fired up? Probably God has to get them fired up. Then what's the rest of the list? People being jealous, people envying, complaining, laziness, mediocrity. I just went through all the papers and started making a list. Then I came back and put hash marks by the ones that occurred most often. And so the top of the list, stubbornness, worldliness, hurt feelings, materialism, negativity, immaturity, bitterness, unconfessed sin, unwilling to be taught, doesn't want to be supportive. I mean, doesn't this list just wear you out, this ugliness? It's like, why are we looking at this? Because you need to know this stuff's going to come flying at you in ministry. Maybe not all at once the first year, hopefully not, but just keep this handy to say, yeah, this kind of stuff will come after me. And haven't you read about some of this stuff from your interviews, from the people you've talked to? Maybe not all of it, but that's why I put it all together. Lack of passion, lack of vision, lack of openness, lack of humility, lack of servant hearts, forgiveness, honesty, lack of Bible knowledge, lack of support, lack of peaceful relationships, lack of loving others and speaking the truth in love, different backgrounds. Wow. In fact, when I went to work in Illinois, helped start a Christian high school, I typed up a little 1-page paper that said some things you ought to know about me. Because I was moving to Central Illinois. And I put down, I grew up on a farm in Oklahoma, raising wheat and cattle and pigs. And I went to a little 1-room school, grade school, where I was the only one in my grade for a couple of years, and then for the next 3 or 4 years, there were about 2 or 3 people in my grade. And put me on a bus and took me off to a city high school, to a small town high school, where for the first time in my life I saw a real fight between 2 guys who were mad at each other. And I'm going, whoa, I've never seen people. Now, I've probably seen farmers get that mad at a pig and take a stick and whack that pig real hard with it. But I've never seen a human being so mad at another human being that they would take a stick and try to knock their head off. I thought, whoa, that's almost inhuman. And I just told them some things about myself. And that I didn't get saved till I was 18 years old. And came off to Kansas City to go to Calvary to school, to grow spiritually, and this is what happened to me. And graduated from here and met my wife here and went to work in a Christian school. And what did I want these people to know? When I interviewed for the job, I wanted them to know what kind of person they were getting. You know what my wife said? She goes, Tom, you're being pretty transparent in this thing. What if they don't want to hire you? I said, okay, if I wasn't transparent, would they learn all of this once I got there? Will they eventually learn about me as a person once they get to know me? Yes or no? I mean, it might take a while, but they'll eventually figure it out. If they don't like what I am before I get, if they're not willing to take me for what I am before I get there, they're probably going to wish I wasn't there after I've been there a while. So I might as well avoid the grief. Why go up there and expend all that energy when they're going to say, we don't like the way you do things? And the ones that had questions about some things, they fired questions at me. In fact, one guy even said to me, he said, I noticed you're a pretty strong-willed man. You have a lot of ideas that you believe in, and you hit the ground running. I said, yes, I do. That's my personality. He said, well, what I want to know is what happens when one of your great ideas doesn't agree with your boss's great idea, and he thinks that you shouldn't do it. I'm going, then I sit back and say, thank you, Lord. And he said, what? I say, thank you, Lord. I'm a pretty headstrong guy, okay? Have you figured that out about me from just having me in class? I have strong feelings about stuff. Okay, so what happens when I'm charging down the road with my strong feelings and my boss says, whoa, that's a bad idea? You know what? I have such a strong belief in God's chain of command that God uses my boss to stop me from doing something that would be a tragedy. So when this board member heard me say that, he said, so you mean to say if you come in here, bang, 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 and your boss says, no, don't do that, you would say, okay, we won't do that. I said, that's exactly right. And then one of the men said, well, I'll tell you right now something that bothers me. And I said, what's that? He said, you come from a school where they use a demerit system for discipline. Have any of you heard of that? Where when you do something wrong, you get so many demerits for being late to class and so many demerits for not turning in your homework, and then you accumulate demerits and you get in trouble at certain degrees for the number of demerits you have. Have you ever heard of a program like that? Okay, well this school where I worked used demerits, and this board member said, well, we don't want demerits at our school. So you can't bring that system from your school to our school for discipline. And I said, that's okay. We don't have to have demerits to have discipline. The question is, do you want a disciplined school? Do you want students to obey the rules? And do you want rules for students to obey? And they said, yes. I said, then that's good enough. That's all we need. And how we carry it out doesn't have to be with demerits. He said, well, I'm glad to hear that. And so I never brought up demerits. So I thought, well, how will we handle this? Okay, the school I came from, they gave demerits to students for misbehaving. Okay, but we can't give demerits at this school. So what do? I take a sheet of paper, and when you misbehave in my class, I write your name down, Daniel, and I put a note by your name as to what you did. And I write Talk's name down, I write Esther's name down, and I write down what you did. And you don't get demerits for doing that stuff. I just keep a record of what you've done. And then the student says, what do you do with these records, Mr. Bonai? I said, oh, I keep them in my file folder, in my behavior folder. So when your parents ask me, how are you doing in school in terms of behavior? I pull these sheets out and I tell them what kind of stuff you do in my class. So Daniel's throwing spitwads. So I just put down, Daniel's throwing spitwads. Now, personally, I hate spitwads. I think that's the most disgusting thing in the world. So you do too, Daniel? Okay, so Daniel's throwing spitwads. And I write it down. And Daniel says, are you going to tell my parents I was throwing spitwads? And what's the answer? Yes, I am. Oh no. I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble. Then don't throw spit wads in my classroom. So I didn't need the merits. All I needed the students to know is that, and somebody said, do you tell me that you keep these notes and you call our parents? I said, when I get tired of your misbehavior and I want your parents to do something about it, I call them and ask them for their help. Any idea what that did to the behavior in my classroom and in our school? I had one teacher who didn't like that idea and said she didn't want to use that. She just wanted to call people down in class, and she was sure if she told them the right thing to do, they would all do the right thing. I said, okay. She was a new teacher right out of college. I said, that's fine. You run your class any way you want. I'll give you that flexibility. About 4 weeks into school, she came to me and complained about the way 2 boys were behaving in her classroom. And I said, and she wanted me to get them out of the class, her art class. And I said, okay, I will, but I need some basis for that. So would you take a piece of paper and just put these 2 boys' names on it? And every time they misbehave, write down what they're doing, so I have documentation for why I take them out of class. Any idea what happened when she started writing down everything they were doing? What do you think happened? They shaped up and quit fooling around. And she said, I guess you don't need to take them out. Now that I'm writing stuff down, but she said, but I don't do it for everybody. I said, you don't have to do it for everybody. You just do it for these 2 turkeys because they need special supervision. And see, I'm not offended by those turkeys. And you know why I'm not, Daniel? You know why those turkeys don't offend me? When I was in high school, what do you think I was?
A poultry.
I was one of those turkeys. And you know what? I have to say this. I've wondered more than once, why did teachers let me get away with some of that stupidity? With some of that dumb stuff? Why didn't someone do something about it early in my life and say, you need to fix this, Tom? Of course, had today, some people, you call their parents and their parents were what? I had a friend of mine call me the other day complaining about school. The school expelled my daughter for blowing raspberries. I'm going, what? And so they say, I go, what? And you know what raspberries are? Only you know what they called it on the expulsion note? Spitting on people. Well, if you blow a raspberry like that, that's nothing. But if I get right up next to you and blow a raspberry in your ear, Daniel, what am I doing? I'm spitting on you, right? And I said to these parents, you better be glad I wasn't the principal. I said, don't call me and complain about the principal. You ought to be complaining about your daughter not being smarter than that.
You told that to the parent?
Yeah, I did. I said, you're going to let her spit in your ear? She better not spit in my ear. I mean, you can call it blowing raspberries, but what it is spitting on people. That's disgusting. Well, I hadn't thought of it like that. Well, think of it like that. And then tell her to go to school and apologize, and instead of calling the school and complaining about expelling her or suspending her for blowing raspberries. See, I didn't even know what blowing a raspberry was till they explained it to me. And then I said, you can call it what you want. You're spitting on people. That's inappropriate. That's just crazy. Well, my daughter's a little hyper and they need to make some allowances. Do I need to make allowance for people to spit on people because they're hyper? Hey, I'm hyper, people. I was hyper in school. I was smart enough to know you don't spit on people. Okay. Well, you've got this list here. You can just file it away so you don't get discouraged down the road when people are doing this stuff to you. Just remember, they didn't just decide to do it to you. They've been doing it to others before you came along. You guys have a good day, and I'll see you tomorrow. And whether I like it or not, I have to quit tomorrow, don't I?